A Tale from the Other Side. This is the Untitled Film Project Podcast. Today, we're talking about the movie Priscilla.
What is the intent here, Mr. Presley? You got women throwing themselves at you. Why my daughter?
Well, sir, I happen to be very fond of your daughter. She's much more mature than her age.
Less than 18 months after getting a movie about Elvis, we get a movie about Priscilla's story. We'll be talking about that and our big question.
Looking back at the films that you've seen in 2023, we all have like lists or spreadsheets or...
We keep track.
Yeah, we keep track because we have to. And quite honestly, I have to, otherwise I will forget what I've seen. That's the point of this question. Looking back at the films you've seen in 2023, what movie or movies have you forgotten you've seen?
Oh,
probably not a good sign for the
so
movie.
bad. Yeah. You spend a couple hours of your life and you don't even remember that you saw it.
Or more.
The length of movies today, so true. Priscilla, the story by Sofia Coppola, taken from her memoir. Priscilla Presley, the very young girl who ended up marrying Elvis. Let's get initial takes, starting with Gover.
Guys, was the point of this film to convey loneliness? If it was... I'll just give it a score right now, 10 out of 10. That is my initial take.
If you're going for loneliness. Priscilla. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to have to dive a little more into that.
So that's just a deeper dive is 4.
Are you lonesome tonight?
All right, cut it out.
That's enough.
He started it.
I did not give you a song title. Thank you very much.
We didn't give any songs in this film either.
That's true.
And, well, that will take me to one of my initial takes, which is, thankfully, there were not a whole lot of Elvis songs in this movie.
Thankfully.
I am so apathetic to Elvis's music and his story, and I'm tired of his story, that I was glad there was very little Elvis music in it. So I'm just being forthcoming. I totally admit he has this amazing place in music history. He was the first of his kind. He changed things forever. He was very talented. I just don't happen to like it. But this movie was so refreshing. I'm so sick of pretty much the same Elvis stories that telling it from Priscilla's perspective was a breath of fresh air. So that's my initial take. Bradford, what do you think? Priscilla.
So kind of building upon that too, knowing that this is based on the book Elvis Me by Priscilla Presley, this is definitely her take. So this is not necessarily a director's interpretation. This is not some other writer's interpretation. This is taking it directly from the book written by Priscilla Presley. So in terms of the story that we get, it's going to be difficult to ever get 100% true, just as with anybody, right?
Absolutely.
Things are always going to be somewhere in the middle or lean a certain way. We're not going to get the 100% true story. What was curious to me, given my age as an elder millennial that did not necessarily grow up knowing Elvis's story as much, was how much I feel like it exposed in terms of the history of this relationship. And that, yes, it may have been the late 50s, early 60s. It is still not that much of a different time to where a 24 and a 14-year-old should be dating. And...
Yes.
The red flags that I think this film exposed is giving very good reason why so many fans and Elvis estate and so many other people are pissed about this film, including, I guess, Lisa Marie Presley. She saw it as well and was not too happy with the way that it was portrayed. But it's been interesting because even just me posting on Facebook the picture of me going to the screening had a result of, I don't want to hear her lies.
People didn't want to hear anything that tarnished their wonderful nostalgia for their favorite artist.
So in terms of taking this step to paint a different picture, that it wasn't all sunshine and daisies, which we all know it wasn't, especially near the end. There's a reason why she left him.
There's a dark side.
But the beginning of the relationship as well, and that what I said in terms of my initial review when we first saw the screening was, it was grooming for companionship. There wasn't like a sexual predatory thing necessarily here.
Right.
It was, he had a gap that needed to be filled, of someone to come home to that made him feel like home, and that started off in Germany.
Yes.
I didn't know all these things. We knew they met very young. She was very young when they met. I did not realize it was so young, and that she went to go live with him in Memphis, and all these other things that the history is exposed to. We're seeing so many of these historical exposure types of movies coming out right now as well. And for folks that just know Elvis for his music, I thought it was refreshing in terms of we're seeing a different side of the story. Whether it's all 100% true or not, we don't know. We will probably never know the 100% true story of these things.
Nobody ever does.
To get this side shows how complicated of a relationship they had. I thought Kaylee Spaney did a fantastic job in her interview with her first ever talk show appearance with Jimmy Fallon on The Tonight Show.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Welcome
to the big time.
That she sat next to Priscilla Presley during the viewing in Venice.
Wow.
And that Priscilla told her she did a great job, gave her so many kind words and everything on the performance. Overall, I liked Jacob Elordi's performance of Elvis because it wasn't over the top. It felt more genuine to Elvis, that you didn't get that.
It was a little dialed back.
Yeah, you didn't get the character actor you see on the side of the streets, the impersonator, which we see the heightened version of. That's always what you think in your mind is Elvis. No, this felt more like, Elvis the person with just the hints of it. Sofia Coppola, very, very talented director. I like the take on music, in the use of music in this film, because they obviously probably didn't have rights to use Elvis music. They couldn't use Elvis music. They had to tell the story and set the scene without using Elvis's music, and I think that takes a lot of talent in a movie that is discussing the relationship with Elvis to be able to pull that off, especially at the end with Dolly Parton's I'll Always Love You and the connection that song has just to Elvis and to that time period and everything like that. So I thought overall it was a really good film, taking it for what it is as a film, not necessarily how accurate it was or anything like that, but the performances, the way they did the film, I overall enjoyed it.
All right.
I love how our initial text took about 12 seconds.
Bradford
went on for about 8 minutes.
Because mine's always broad because I'm bringing up topics.
It's
for
an
us to discuss
initial
further.
tome.
And my jokes are bad.
Look that word up, kids.
All right, let's go deeper into the movie Priscilla.
Bradford already did.
Yeah, I know. He used up all his time.
I did not yield my time to the gentleman from Untitled.
That has been given.
Merch available at UntitledFilmProjectPod.com. Just kidding. Not yet. It's coming.
Please don't. It's not available.
It's coming. Not yet.
So, let's get into what we actually saw in the film, and then let's get into the ethics of it. Let's divide that into a couple of things. Okay, so first of all, this movie was absolutely beautiful to look at. As opposed to, I think, every other Elvis movie that I've been forced to sit through, and especially Baz Luhrmann, which is pop, glamour, explosions, it's spotlights. What I noticed in this movie was most scenes were filmed in daylight. It had a softer image to it. It was very lovely. There was a soft focus used strategically in a lot of places, which you could do a separate thing on that, which I thought was just really nice. It was a period piece that didn't feel like it was trying too hard to be a period piece. It just felt right. Just the look of the movie, hats off to that, whoever, the director of photography and set design.
So building upon that, I think it makes total sense because we're telling it from Priscilla's angle, which is soft-spoken. She's having to play second. Whereas if it was told from Elvis's angle, it is going to be flashy. It's going to be out there. It's going to be elaborate and everything. So I think that matches the tone.
Absolutely.
It totally you could tell just the thought process was there, that it's not an Elvis movie. It's a Priscilla movie.
It's telling
with
her
Elvis
story.
in it. Yeah, so it is going to be soft and well lit, and it's supposed to be just soft to the touch.
Yeah.
Lines up really well.
Yeah, and I think it also lines up with the purity of the age of where this movie starts, and the innocence. So I mean that came across with the technical aspects of the way they filmed this movie, which is another kudo to the way they made this movie. What stood out to you in this movie as some good filmmaking?
I'll go and ask a question to counter that.
Okay.
Did it feel choppy to you guys? Because there were scenes where I thought, okay, that's perfectly appropriate to then, like, for example, like when she's like, what about me being desired or whatever it was, and then he counters with, it's just not the right time, baby, but it doesn't mean we can't do other things. And then there's like a kiss, and then it fades out to the next scene. That's totally appropriate and fine. I love the artistic choice there. Okay, but there were other scenes, like the Taekwondo instructor, for example. Not the actual session that shows her getting stronger, right, being more confident. Or something.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about. It's the next scene where she's sitting at a lunch with him, and she's like touching his arm and stuff. Is that supposed to imply that she had an affair with him? Is that scene? It's like she's just eating lunch with the guy. Like it seemed not necessary. If they take that scene out altogether, I, as an audience member, have no different reaction whatsoever to the film. So am I missing something? And that's what I'm asking.
No, I don't think you're missing something. I think you're hitting it because this is playing out like a book. Books do that. Well, they'll just kind of like tease a little bit and let the reader take in what they want to. So that felt more like a book scene in terms of how that was shot, that she probably didn't elaborate in her book more into what was happening there, but just maybe thought that maybe the confidence level, or maybe there was something else, there was a little bit more, could have been fooling around, or something like that.
Or she's still unfulfilled in that desire way.
Right.
And she's taking any opportunity, whether it be just sitting down and having lunch, to try to get more of his romantic attention that she's just not getting anywhere because he refuses to.
I think there's interpretation there.
I don't know.
think that's the book side of the angle.
That makes sense.
I couldn't tell.
But for me, the movie seemed choppy a little bit in that regard. Again, early on, it was just like screaming. It was great. I mean, but then like all of a sudden, like around the midway point or so, it just seemed like there were scenes that didn't matter. And then, well, maybe they have a more symbolic meaning, and that's fine, but it didn't seem to fit. And it was just, it came across feeling jagged.
Okay.
I didn't get that much.
Yeah, I didn't feel that. But, to each his own. Bradford, you talked about the use of soundtrack in the movie. How was the soundtrack used? What did you like about the soundtrack, and in particular?
Well, in particular, it was pretty early to notice on that we're not going to get Elvis music. And if we were, we're going to get some deep track that we're not really familiar with as well, too. But what I like about the music overall, and I can't think of all the specific songs in my head right now, but the use of music from the period, so making it a period piece, set the tone without making it feel like an Elvis movie. So I thought it was very calculated in a very good way of how they use different types of tracks of music in this. And it was edited very well, so it wasn't taking over the scene either. It just set the scene for the film in terms of where they're at, what they're doing. But the big thing to me is the Dolly Parton one. Is I'll Always Love You at the very end, because that hit, because this is the scene where she's breaking up with him.
She's leaving him.
But leaving him. It's not the Whitney Houston version, because that wasn't even available yet.
Right.
But it's the Dolly version, to where there's even rumors that it was given to Elvis potentially to record. I mean, there's so many different background connections to that song that it was strategic in how they utilize these pieces of music without having Elvis. Because in an Elvis movie, even though it's not an Elvis movie, the expectation is you might get some of those songs, right? Some form or fashion. They didn't do that, and I really liked the way they were able to pull it off without using his music at all.
Yeah, I got more on that, but Gover, what did you think about the use of the soundtrack?
Well, I just wanted, this was a perfect reminder. I actually forgot about this until he started talking about music. The absence of score early was so powerful in the point that I made earlier, which is it supposed to make you feel lonely? Because there's no score in the first there probably is, but I mean, like it was silent in key moments.
It's so subtle.
Yeah, in the probably the first half hour.
At least.
She's walking around the house. There's nothing. She's in Germany in her room. Nothing. It's just the complete absence of score only help. Just like score helps you feel emotion when it's on. Well, when you take it away, you feel even more of a different emotion. And Coppola really nailed it with this one. I just wanted to bring that up because I forgot.
Yeah, no.
High five.
That's a good one.
That was awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That was great.
Because that's exactly what I think we're supposed to feel is her loneliness. Okay? I mean, it's part of his and part of hers, and mostly hers, that, she absolutely, like when there's no soundtrack playing, everything feels longer. The time that you're not with somebody or doing something that is positive just feels even longer.
And your senses are completely focused on what you're seeing.
especially when she's standing alone in Graceland.
Yeah.
He's not there. There's the work's going on in the basement, everything. She's just standing there, just kind of walking around,
and she's
with nothing
Or
to do.
sitting in different chairs.
Sits on a couch.
Completely silent.
As a teenager, too.
Yeah.
As a teenager who's used to being with her family, and not even friends, but just used to being with schoolmates and everything, too, in class. And all of a sudden, she's just alone, being the king's companion at this point, and there's nothing.
And that's a contrast too, because when she's in school, all the school scenes, there's all kinds of noise and chitter chatter and gossip and all kinds of things.
They've got
noise
life
around her.
Yeah, they've got a life. They've got interesting friends. They're doing fun stuff. She's isolated.
Yes.
The thing about the soundtrack that I liked about this, and I'm not going to make another I don't care for Elvis music joke, but
You just did.
Maybe, is that because they didn't use Elvis music, it further showed her isolation from the rest of his life. Okay? So she felt in the real world by using the music, that they decided to use in the soundtrack as her soundtrack. Is she's just living in the rest of the world where everybody else is. Okay? Mm-hmm. And his music is almost like a rumor to her because she is cut off from most of his life. All right, let's get now into the subject matter of the film and the moral, ethical problems we see with what was portrayed in this movie, Priscilla being such a young child when Elvis started pursuing her.
How did he pick her? I know a fellow serviceman came up and said, "Hey, but that seems so out of the movie starts with that."
Yes.
Invited to a party.
Right. So how did he know? Because that guy seemed like an upstanding guy. He's like, "Oh, my wife and I will chaperone," and nothing shady happened with that when she was with him. It was almost like Elvis saw her and said, "Hey, go get that girl," but that wasn't said.
I kind of got the impression that this guy knew what Elvis wanted.
Okay.
That's what I got
he
too.
was on the lookout.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the searcher.
Yeah.
Okay. So but either way, so that's predatory.
It is.
Doesn't have to be sexually predatory.
Right.
Sure.
It's still
Just predatory as in like, I'm going to take advantage of a situation of a young person who doesn't know any better and then make them this thing that I want them to be.
Oh, sure. It's like a music star that says, security, go find me the prettiest girl in the front row and invite her backstage.
Yeah, that's right.
So go over to build on that. Her parents
Yes.
saw an opportunity, obviously, because how many parents are going to let your 15, 16-year-old
She's in ninth grade.
go
I guess at that point you're right.
go across the pond
Yeah.
and live with Elvis Presley, with his dad as the guardian, and do that for even a month, just as a temporary visit. Even though in the movie they portray them as having some reservations, they still let it happen.
Okay, well, this is where I think the movie did its best work. Okay, they took what would be a normal reaction from parents, like, no, I mean, why should my daughter go to this party at first? Why, and then it kept escalating. And they showed the subtle manipulation of the parents. It's not like she needed manipulation. She was
Right.
She really wanted to go. But they used his military respect and, the promises of other military men that they would care for her to get him to just loosen his restrictions just a little bit. And they just kept finding new ways to slowly turn up the temperature of the relationship. And by the end of the movie, she's the frog in the boiling water, but we barely saw it because they just turned up the temperature a little bit at a time. And that's how I think the parents got fooled. And that's, I think, how the whole world kind of just got fooled into, hey, where is this? Like, the rest of the world didn't even know who she was.
Right.
He kept her secret. All of a sudden, he's marrying this girl. Well, it's because over a long period of time, they just kept turning up the heat.
Yeah, you're right. And because to me, just thinking that she's 17, saying, no, finish high school over in Memphis. I'm going to enroll her in a good Catholic school and everything too. Just what? Saying yes to that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what gets, especially, I can't imagine a military father in the 60s.
Also, I think there's a little naivete maybe back in that day that we weren't
That's true.
We weren't looking for predators like we like we are now and have been for a while.
Dude, in the 80s, I rode my bike 2 miles to Rayleigh's to get a candy bar and then 2 miles back. My parents had no idea where I was at any time. And then, now I know I'm not a girl, but this is 2 decades before that.
Right.
Right? And here's this person who has military respect and other people vouching for him.
Right.
Almost indirectly.
Still a rock star, though.
Sure. But it's still like, oh, well, she'll be taken care of.
Right.
If you slow boil it, like Jim says, it's
parents
not
were
out
groomed
of the
too.
question.
Yeah, the parents were groomed as well.
And he's the first rock star ever.
What's the Beatle?
So there's nothing for them to base it on. They haven't seen horrible documentaries.
That's right.
You know, like the old VH1s. You know, and when we come back, the bottom falls out.
Inside the music.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, like there's no precedent to show some of the dangers that were out there. They had nothing to go on.
So obviously, this movie, if you are a diehard Elvis fan, you're probably going to get pissed off.
Oh yeah.
If you can't see other versions of a story being told, and you have blinders on to just accept everything that you feel like Elvis was a good person, things like that, there's always going to be trouble in a paradise like that.
Which is dangerous.
Yes.
In any walk of life.
Absolutely.
For you to think that whatever you think is the
but it's already
100%
out there.
fact.
But it's already out
Sure.
there. And I think if you look at this for a true film perspective, I think overall people will like it as a film perspective, or people that even questioned Elvis a little bit too, and his pursuits of Priscilla and how that relationship ended and came to a close and why. Because it closes just basically with her leaving. They don't go on with Elvis' story after that.
She just drives off.
She drives off, which I think is a great way to end it.
It is a great way to end it.
Overall, because it's not an Elvis story, it's a Priscilla story.
It left me wanting more.
Right.
When she drives away through the gates and the credits rolled, I was like, wait.
Right.
That's it?
Right.
But then I realized, no.
It's her story.
That's the perfect way to end it.
Yeah, because it's her story.
But for about 2 seconds, I wanted more, and that's a good sign.
Yeah. I want to, address, I think maybe what somebody who is an Elvis fan would be thinking or saying on this movie. Okay. So I'm playing devil's advocate here. This is not my view, but they might be saying he kept it pure, which, as far as we know in this movie, it was not sexual.
Based on Priscilla's word.
Based on Priscilla's words.
Which we're going to get to in my scores.
And so they could say, like, he kept her being a nice girl. I will immediately wipe that away by he absolutely stole her life from her. But I think that might be one of the defenses. And I don't think it's a great one because it's not all about sex. It's about someone's agency and the right to determine their own life, especially when they are more vulnerable. People always say, like, oh, well, what's the age is not a thing. When you haven't evolved, developed, or matured, you are susceptible to somebody who has. So age is always going to be a thing when you're in that development stage of teenage years up to maybe like 24. I think they say that determines who you are going to be for the rest of your life.
34, 24, not as big of a deal.
Right.
24, 14, big deal.
Huge. All right, let's get our final take and scores on Priscilla. Let's start with Justin Bradford.
All right. So overall, I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed the cinematography of it, the soft touch, the lighting aspect of it. I thought it was mixed pretty well. Kaylee Spaney, I thought was fantastic. This is her breakout role. Jacob Elordi, I thought he did a fantastic job as well. I mean, there's always pressure when you're playing a role of someone that's iconic.
I think it's the worst role to be handed.
So difficult.
Right?
So, like, how do you pull that off? Because you're going to be under the microscope of everything you do, whether it's your body language, your voice, your look, your facial expressions, everything.
They're comparing you to the real person, every impersonator.
Everything.
And every other movie that's been done where somebody played Elvis.
And with Kaylee Spaney, I don't feel like there's as much pressure, even though people know what Priscilla looks like. people didn't really get exposed to Priscilla until she had her own life after Elvis passed away.
Yeah.
Is when they got to know her. So a young Priscilla, nobody knows what to gauge that off of. So she, I don't want to say free reign, but she had just the ability to talk to Priscilla and get her take on it and then make it her own. So I really liked her take on this. I think Sofia Coppola is a fantastic director. Overall, I think this movie is going to continue to roll in terms of people that appreciate good film and want a different take on the Elvis story as well, too. For me, I give it an 8.
Very good. I also thought that Sofia Coppola handled this really well. I love that it was a refreshing new take on what I think is an overtold story. And Kaylee Spaney, I'm putting her in conversation for Best Actress because I think she just did a fantastic job and carried this whole movie. Jacob Elordi was good. I thought he did a great job with it, but this movie was not the focus of him, and he didn't have to do it for long stretches of time. So, like, he did a great job. If it was a bigger role, I might consider him for an award, but he did exactly what he needed to do. I think the way this movie did the slow burn of, her evolution until she eventually drives off and leaves Elvis, I thought was beautiful. To me, it was such a smooth, natural, even the way they, introduced Elvis's drug problem into it was just so like, it wasn't like all of a sudden he's got a drug problem. They walked you through this like slow, it's just a little thing. And eventually all those things get worse and worse. And it did it in such a subtle way that I thought, okay, that's masterful storytelling. So I also am going to give Priscilla an 8. Gover.
The symbolism is off the charts. We mentioned it earlier, how it was softly shot. It feels soft. It feels innocent. There's a lack of score, making you feel isolated, which is, again, what she felt like. Daylight dominant, because it's so much, the future is bright, right? All these. So the symbolism is off the charts. Great directing. How much of this was character protection from both Priscilla and Elvis? Priscilla wrote the book this is based on. Priscilla served as executive producer on this film. She sat with Kaylee Spaney and they had conversations together. When we talked to her on the A24 media availability press conference, she had mentioned that she got a chance to sit with her. She was really nervous, but then eventually she got to see her light up when talking about Elvis and on certain things. And she got to see her emotion when she was retelling certain stories and this and that. So my question is, how much of this, we already talked about how, right, nothing is 100% true either way, right?
Yeah.
So how much of this book and this movie is character protection for herself and for who she's writing about? She has to sell books back in the 80s when it came out, right? Sure. She has to sell books, so she's got to put some stuff in there, and that's fine. I understand that. But if she still loves him, if there's still kind of this always warm place in her heart for him, all that, is she protecting him?
Oh, that's possible.
Did they really have sexual relations while she was in high school? But she protected him in this film and in the story. Like, no, we didn't do anything.
And she also,
he would not violate.
She could be protecting Lisa Marie, her daughter.
Also that. Thank you. That's another level. Thank you for saying that. So I do wonder that. Now, again.
Good point.
That's shouldn't be part of my grade because that's not part of the movie. That's just real life, right? She wrote the book, executive producer. How much of this is influence? We see this all the time. LeBron James had a movie come out about his high school team earlier this year. Right. And I wondered the whole time, is he going to end up looking like a hero in it? Right. Because he helped write the book and executive producer. So how is he going to spin his own narrative? We've seen it over and over again. Shooting Stars, by the way, is what it's called. There's a review on Untitled Film Project Pod on that movie. But we see this all the time. So I guess my point is, I'm not using this against my score, but I wanted to bring it up because I do think it's an interesting question. How much of what you're seeing, yes, it's her take.
Yes.
But it's her take of maybe
a filtered one.
Yes, right. And whatever she thinks is important to say. Kaylee Spaney was great. She probably will not be on my list for Best Actress, however, because I think the powerfulness of the movie is more, I think she's more a product of great directing.
Okay.
As opposed to the other way around.
All right.
Nothing against her per se. She did what she did, but I just think the directing was so top notch that I think it didn't overshadow her. I just think the emotion you feel from her character to a point is her, but I think a lot of it has to do with how the movie was made and shot.
Interesting take.
It felt choppy, like I said, at certain points, and I can't ignore that. If I'm in the theater thinking, why is that in there? Then that's an audience goer's experience. And the lack of score only increased, again, the gravitas, the emotion of the scene, of the symbolism of all those things. I give it a 7.5.
There we go. So a near unanimous scores for Priscilla, an A24 film. You're with the Untitled Film Project Podcast, and at the end of every episode, we ask a big question. Gover, what's our question today?
Well, we typically keep, well, not typically, we do keep a spreadsheet or a document or whatever of all the movies we've seen over the year, right?
Yes.
Because we need, so for awards consideration and things like that, we need reminders sometimes. But typically, award-worthy movies or some aspect of it makes it memorable. We kind of remember, oh yeah, we did see. What about the other movies? The movies that we forgot we saw. So the big question is, thinking back to the movies you've seen in 2023, think back. What movie did you forget that you've seen?
The least memorable film of 2023 so
Doesn't
far.
necessarily mean it's the worst, by the way.
Right,
It's very clear. Doesn't mean it's the worst.
The worst stands
Because
out
you would
sometimes.
remember that, too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
65.
Yeah. So, what movie going through your list, did you go, oh, that's right, I did see that movie?
Yeah.
So I will start this one because I should have remembered that we saw this because it was, I think, one of our more entertaining podcasts because we had so much fun. It's the movie Plane
Yes.
with Gerard Butler.
Can't forget that one.
Such a great episode.
I forgot it. I mean, maybe it's the title, or maybe it's just it felt like it was a movie that would have come out on TV or something.
So Jim, in my spreadsheet, that is row number 1. It's
Yes.
the first movie in theaters for the year.
Yeah.
Title: Plane, genre action. Let's see, leads Gerard Butler. Thoughts: awful.
Oh my God.
Award worthy? No.
Yeah, that's those are pretty much my notes as well. So I completely forgot about that movie. Not good enough to be remembered for good reasons, and not even bad enough to remember it as a movie I hated.
Yeah.
So
hated it a lot.
Great episode, though.
It was fun.
Seriously, if you've not listened to that episode, whether you've seen the movie or not, it doesn't matter. We're not ruining anything.
There was a lot of fun
You
had.
got to go check it out. I'm going to link it in the top corner of the screen. It's so fun.
Jeez.
All right, Mr. Bradford, tell us your least memorable movie of 2023 so far.
Okay, so the point was made that it's not going to be the most awful one because I'll remember the bad ones.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to stand out like Plane, 65. Those stand out to me.
Yep.
The one that I forgot, they're scrolling up. So I've seen so far in theaters, I've seen 55 movies this year.
Wow.
In theaters. So I'm scrolling up and I'm seeing a bunch of movies like, oh, I remember that one. I forgot that I saw Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre in theaters.
I don't even know what that movie is.
Jason Statham, Aubrey Plaza.
That tells you all. Oh, no, that doesn't. Just say Jason Statham tells you all you need to know. But Aubrey Plaza is pretty good redemption. Yeah.
Carrie Ellis, Hugh Grant, and Josh Hartnett. Like, that's a
decent cast.
Decent cast. It's supposed to be a spy action movie directed by Guy Ritchie as well. In my review, I said, it's an all right spy flick, some good dry humor. Aubrey Plaza stole the film. It's a good popcorn movie. There's nothing ridiculous or insane great about it, but it's another Jason Statham movie, which just has to be entertaining. It has to be good. It just has to be fun.
But it didn't stay in your brain.
It didn't stay in my brain. Like, at the moment, it was fine. Like, it was a fine action flick, but I completely forgot that I saw that movie this year.
That's great. Gover, what movie did you forget you saw?
I'm going a little bit off the beaten path.
Okay.
Because it's a major release, but it was an Apple TV release.
Okay.
Tetris.
Oh, yeah.
I completely forgot.
It's not even that long ago.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm scrolling down my list. I'm like, yeah, I remember most of the. And then I was like, oh my God, I forgot that was even a thing. It's like, well, I guess that's my answer.
It's the story of the guy who invented Tetris and the guy from the United States who tried to market it around the world.
Yes. And there's a review up on UntitledFilmProjectPod.com. And you think if I wrote a review about it, I would remember it. I saw it. Nah,
Pretty forgettable.
Really. I gave it a 5.5 for those who are wondering. And just, kind of middle of the road. It was fun for me as a Tetris guy. Like I still believe Tetris is the greatest video game of all time.
Sure.
And so for me, I was really into it. If you don't care or don't know Tetris or have limited exposure to it, it's completely benign. It's not a waste of your time, but it's like, okay, it's a spy, I guess.
It takes up space.
Yes, it does. So Tetris, the Apple Plus, Apple TV Plus, whatever they call it, that release is my forgotten movie of 2023.
Already. All right, a little tease about our next episode of the Untitled Film Project Podcast. We're going to go in a little more positive direction for the big question, and we're going to ask you, what movie are you looking forward to the most that's going to be coming out between now and the end of the year? So stay tuned for the next Untitled Film Project Podcast. Let us know what you thought. If you can remember the movie you don't remember, tell us on social media, Untitled Film Project Pod on the socials.
You said it, so I don't have to. There you go.
I tried to, lift that weight for you.
Thanks, it's heavy.
Lift with your legs, not your back.
Thank you for listening to the Untitled Film Project Podcast. To support the show, please rate, review, follow, and subscribe. Original music by Jeremy Schwartz. Special thanks to the Music City Film Critics Association. Editing and post-production by Jeremy K. Gover. Voiceover by Chad Bennett.